Welcome to Roundabout Oxford, a podcast from the University of Mississippi Libraries.
This time on Roundabout Oxford, spring is in the air and paint is on the canvas as we brush up on art happenings around town. The first stroke will be a colorful interview with Amy Webb, a member of the local art group Quasar. We'll follow that up with a double interview recorded live at Oxford's Southside Gallery with William Dunlap and Robert Marsh, local artists with a major exhibition that has just opened there. Pull up a chair and set your mind at easel because we think you'll find it all very artful indeed.
My name is Sarah Katherine Glass. I'm a library assistant overseeing the Idea Lab, a makerspace located in the J.D. Williams Library. I had the opportunity to chat with Amy Webb, an Ole Miss painting BFA, and a member of Quasar, an Oxford arts group. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about Quasar?
Quasar started out as a small group of friends who would meet on a semi-regular basis, usually Monday, in another old friend's living room. And eventually these events started happening more and more regularly, the last Sunday of every month. And the audience started to grow and grow to where it really outgrew friends' living rooms and basements and turned into a more public affair. The two friends of mine who originally started hosting Quasar in their homes had to move out of state around the time I first exhibited my art at a Quasar event. And I quickly fell in love with the community and just the fact that this was something that was happening in the town. And so they offered to just kind of pass the tradition on to me after they moved out of state. And since then, my own team of friends and I have been hosting the events.
What kind of art is presented at Quasar? I know you yourself are a visual artist, but what other disciplines does Quasar include?
Quasar is totally multidisciplinary. We always try to have at least one exhibiting visual artist. That way, they often get a solo show. And then we always have 2 to 3 spoken word performances. And that can be poetry, it can be comedy. We've even done film before. We've even done play acting. And then we always close out each event with a live performance from a musician. And we've had artists of all kinds, like I said, comedians, musicians of all genres, and visual artists of all mediums.
I know you all just held a Quasar event on February 27th. Tell us a little bit about what happened at that event.
Yeah, that Quasar actually went very smoothly. It was a little short and sweet. Sometimes we bounce between different venues with changing weather patterns and with the Arts Council's availability. So because we weren't able to get the powerhouse as we had in the past through the Arts Council, we worked with Moe's Restaurant and Penny Bar, who allowed us to host our last event at Penny Bar, which was great. But as some people know, the bars on the square here in Oxford close at 9 p.m. very promptly. So we definitely had to wrap things up. But it was very simple setup because it is a bar. Everything, all the tables and chairs were already set out. We didn't really have to worry much about lighting or sound system setup as we do at some of our more minimal event venues. But it was a great time. It was very cozy. All of our the familiar faces of our audience showed up, all of whom are just such sweet people, as well as some new faces who always come to see their friends perform if somebody new is in our lineup. All in all, we had a great time. We had Stella Martin, who was reading poetry. That was just very beautiful and heartfelt. And then in our lineup next after her, we had Tucker Lawson, who did his stand-up routine, which just was absolutely hilarious, and he has a great stage presence. We always take a little bit of an intermission to allow people to survey the art from our exhibiting visual artist, and Ruth Hogue had some amazing paintings on the walls that night. And then after our intermission, we had Horace Willis just really knock the house down with some great music.
Well, that seems like it was a lot of fun. And you mentioned quite a few artists. Can you recall any big local names that Quasar has hosted in the past?
Well, we've had Schaefer Yana, if you're familiar with her, play with us. We've had, honestly, we had some pretty big names before the pandemic, and I feel like Oxford's music scene has been a little quiet lately, but we did have Ben Ricketts, we've had Reed Smith, Rod Smith, as you may know, Horace Willis is a local R&B blues singer. We just try to keep it local, but we often have people from surrounding towns. We often have people who used to live in Oxford and now live nearby. So it's semi-local, but also regional.
As a live event, how did the pandemic affect Quasar?
Oh, wow, yeah. It really forced us to be flexible and adaptable. Before the pandemic, we were hosting our events at Small Hall, and very quickly we could no longer host events safely. But when we tried to start a little bit of a resurgence after the initial onslaught of the pandemic, we started working with the Roundabout Arts Council and formed sort of a partnership. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, we were the only people and some of the first to host an event, though we had to do it very creatively and cautiously. So we held them outside. We started at Lamar Park. We moved on to the pavilion on University. We had everyone wearing masks, and we wanted to make sure we had plenty of space so that people could just bring chairs or picnic blankets and sit with their own little pod. And it was really exciting because through all of this stress and isolation, that was one way that people could experience a public event and see a musician or see some art and do it in a way that wasn't, very incredibly risky.
So you mentioned the Yoknapatawpha Arts Council. They are a great local resource and sponsor. Tell us a little bit more about Quasar's relationship with the Arts Council. And if you would, tell us a little about Quasar's mission to become a nonprofit.
Yeah, the Arts Council has helped us a lot, mainly in providing us venues, and since day one they have always loaned out their PA and sound system to us for our musical performances, and whatever else we need. They've lent us a projector in the past, and they really do kind of help act as a liaison between ourselves and potential sponsors for our magazine. They are actually our sponsor since we aren't currently a nonprofit. So to keep things legal, they kind of handle our finances. But if someone wants to donate to us as a project, they can donate to the Arts Council. Wayne, the director of the Arts Council, put me in touch with Marie Cope, who is the leader of a team of student attorneys here on campus. She is a professor of law, and her student attorneys are kind of helping us take these small baby steps towards applying for nonprofit status. I have a fun story for Quasar.
Sure.
So when I first moved to Oxford, I felt fairly isolated. I mean, I wasn't involved in Greek life. I wasn't a very sporty person. I was an arty person. And as an artsy person who had not yet started my education at the University of Mississippi, I felt pretty isolated from the arts community of Oxford. I definitely tried immediately to branch out by going to gallery receptions and Arts Council events, but I just didn't feel like I was connecting with artists like myself necessarily, like young people who may have found themselves outside of academia. I felt like if I didn't have a BFA or an MFA, or I wasn't a wealthy art collector or someone who was old enough to be mid or late career in their art, for their pursuit of art, I felt like there just wasn't really a place for me. And I knew that there were a lot of people like me. I mean, there are friends of mine who are out there working their day jobs, waiting tables, having a good time, like just trying to live their lives, but that doesn't mean that they have the resources to drop everything and pursue arts. And I want Quasar to be a platform for people who don't feel like they have a place within those realms of academia and galleries. I want it to be a place for people who create art and maybe see it as a hobby, but still a worthwhile expression of themselves, to have a community with which they can share their art and have it be seen and recognized for what it is. And I got so excited when I found that Quasar was a community just like that, and I wanted to do everything to help it grow.
Well, Amy, is there anything else you'd like to add or tell our listeners?
I can remind the listeners that our events are very predictable. They're on the last Sunday of every month from 7 to 9 p.m. typically, and we always promote them very heavily on social media, so we encourage people to not only keep up with the Arts Council newsletters, but follow us on Instagram and you'll see our events promoted there. I also want to add that Quasar is an all-inclusive event. It's very queer friendly. It's very friendly to people of color. We want to encourage everyone to really come out and keep our community well represented. For those who are really excited about the upcoming warmer weather months, we'll probably be having our events more consistently at the pavilion again, because it's just such a nice big space that people have become accustomed to in associating that space with Quasar. And one thing that I think is really fun that's kind of become characteristic of Quasar is instead of using these bright overhead fluorescent lights in that venue, we decided it would be a lot more fun and create some ambiance if we just brought a large collection of table lamps from our homes and Goodwill. And it totally changed the atmosphere and has made Quasar just that much more intimate and cozy, like it was when we were hosting at Small Hall before the pandemic.
So what are some ways that our listeners can get involved with Quasar?
There are many ways. We've had people reach out to us on Instagram. We actually kind of keep a spreadsheet of people who reach out to us and just on a list. And it kind of helps us, in a sense, curate these events where we try to have musicians and artists who will work well together.
Outside of Quasar live events, is there any other media that artists can submit work to?
Yes, we have a biannual magazine, primarily edited and published by our team member and founder, Katherine Flanagan. She no longer lives in Oxford, so she does this remotely. But essentially, artists who have exhibited and performed at Quasar events in the past are welcome to submit their work to our email and be included in our next publication of the magazine. We encourage people to email us at quasarcommunity@gmail.com. And when people email us samples of our work, we can kind of compile them into our list of what genre they are, what their work is, maybe even a little bit of a statement. And our website link is quasararts.org. On our website, we can also take submissions. We try to take everyone into account when someone makes it known to us that they have art they deem worth sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you for sitting down with me, Amy, and I look forward to seeing you at Quasar events happening on the last Sunday of every month from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
So this is Brian Corrigan from Continuing Resources and Acquisitions, and I'm here today talking with William Dunlap and Robert Marsh. Can you all introduce yourselves?
Well, Robert Marsh's mouth's full. We've just had an extraordinary experience here with art students who came up to the square, to Will Cook's gallery, the Southside gallery. And so we dispensed wisdom at an alarming rate because, Robert and I have acquired all this wisdom. And we're just dying to give it away. But Robert and I both got MFAs here in the late 60s, and so we're out and our papers are in order. We don't have to come back, but we do.
You lived right down the street when you went to Ole Miss, is that right, together?
We lived right around the corner on Jackson Avenue. And Sneed's Hardware is where, what's that great restaurant down there everybody goes to now? It's three vegetables and
Ajax.
Ajax, that's right, yeah.
How do you know about Ajax?
I've been here long enough to know where some of the good
Now,
places
where are you
are.
from originally?
I'm from Florence, Alabama.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And Robert's from Sheffield. He came over here and got an MFA in '67. I came from Los Angeles in '67.
Ole Miss could not have been better, for me anyway. I was on the road with my rock and roll band out in California when Miss Dead Jones called my mother. She head of the draft board at the time, said, "William Ralph, it's out in California." So they were going to draft me and send me to Fayetteville, North Carolina. So the university made a scholar out of me. And it turned out, we had a good run here. There were great professors here.
One of the most important exhibitions I ever had was at Averett College. I guess it was about 1970 or 71. When Robert booked me in, I brought the art up there, and there was another guy in town who owned a piece of a gallery in Washington that showed American Impressionism. He was speaking on American Impressionism. We went to that, and he came to our show, and he ended up putting Robert and I in exhibitions in Washington. So our careers were pretty much made then. It's been all downhill.
We were hanging next to Degas and Monet and Andrew Wyeth and all those places. That changed my life in a big way, and it didn't do you stayed up there. It didn't do you any harm.
That's where I ended up getting a lot of the books, a lot of the volumes that I'm giving to the library. Art books from the National Gallery and from the Smithsonian and from the Phillips and all those great museums. Washington is a great museum town. As I said, when I closed down my studio, I had all these volumes, and Miss Patero, who's head of the library, was interested, and so I sent her a few, and they liked them. And Alex Watson and I've been FedExing books to him ever since. And I asked him the last time we were in touch. I said, "What's the score? How many have I sent so far?" He said, "We're up to about 1,500. And these are wonderful volumes, hardback and paperback, and some. And they're all in great condition because some of them still have the plastic on them. But every time there's an exhibition at the National Gallery, the Smithsonian, the Phillips, they do a catalog, beautiful scholarship. And I've ended up with a good deal of those books and some others too. But I really believe in the art book. I mean, the screen has many charms, but it'll never do for art what a book can do.
Yeah. What professional advice would you give to young artists who are starting out?
Marry well. I certainly did, as did you. No, it's tough. It's not one of the things I say. I don't think I even said it to these people today. Is it's not enough to make the art. You have to also make the audience for that art. And you do that in 2 or 3 different ways. Some artists have made their work precious, like I mentioned Cy Twombly before. He moved to Europe, had a family, and got out of the mix altogether. Whereas Rauschenberg would show anywhere, in windows, and that's kind of been my take. I'd show in libraries and service stations, didn't I? People can see the stuff,
If it works at all, if it happens, it's between the retina and the cortex of the brain. Because it's whatever you see in it. It's whatever happens. It's not complete. What's that old thing that we learned in 7th grade about if a tree falls in the woods, if nobody heard it, it make a noise? And that's the way about art. If you make a painting and put it in the closet, does any art take place? It doesn't take place until you force people to come down here at 8 o'clock in the morning and look at it. The art world is a very social place. That's one of the things I want to tell you all about this gallery. Will does a great job here in Southside. This is just like a damn New York gallery. You can come here for the openings and get cheap white wines. Plus, they do a really good job of curating exhibitions. Will writes about art in a very real way. So we're lucky this is not an ice cream parlor here. So support this place. Come down here.
We also talked about with the students the patron. The teaching is the only patron there is these days. But the university has been awfully good to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been good to you.
Yeah. You got a job where you can teach maybe, 3 hours a day, and the rest of the day is mine.
But when you make prints, and in your case, when you make the drawings, you do it publicly. So you're really like an artist in residence. So I know that's what worked for me, is when I could see the guys that were teaching us, Noyce and Dean Adelot, paint. I learned more from watching them do what they do than anything they said. And our friend Noyce Long, who was here for a couple of years, his vocabulary, his tongue, and his eye are totally connected. That's something I always aspired to, was to be able to talk about what it is I'm looking at. And it's not an easy thing to do, because you're being asked to verbalize about a nonverbal form of communication. And that ain't natural, as they say. As they say in Webster County, boys, that just ain't natural.
And Noah's majored in English. He was a guard at the Metropolitan, I think, for 2 years. Yeah. And said he learned more about art than he had ever imagined he could. But just looking at, and he had the night shift, because he was in there by himself.
Well, we made fun of osmosis, but it really works. The more you're around art, the more you're around good writing, it seeps in. It gets in. I think that's what Ole Miss has done for a lot of people here. But the fact of the matter is, if you're around it, there's some of the professors. Lewis Dollarhide, who was here forever. He was at Mississippi College. I never had a class with him, but we got to be friends. But he'd use your name in the same sentence with Giacometti, with Rodin, and it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of difference.
You're a writer in addition to being an artist, is that right?
Well, I write. I've always written. I've kept every journal, that I've ever had used. The journals and the sketchbooks are the same thing. And I started in Mississippi College, and every time I've moved, they've gone into a high shelf and higher shelf. And I brought them down a couple of years ago and looked through them for ideas for paintings. And damned if I didn't find ideas for fiction. And I wrote the first book, compiled it to short stories.
I was thinking when you were talking about hypothetical realism, that's a term that you use for your art. Isn't that kind of what fiction is?
Oh, yeah, I think it is. My friend Barry Hanna, this is the name of my second book, is Lying and Making a Living. I was reading it, he was being interviewed by somebody, and he wanted to get out of the interview. He said, we got to bring this to an end. I got to get back to lying and making a living. Now, that's the best definition of fiction I've ever heard. And I flatter myself to even be from the same part of the world that William Faulkner's from, but we both sprung from the hill tribes of North Mississippi. But Mr. Faulkner said, when asked whether his work was about character or plot, he said, oh, character. All I do is invent these people and run along behind them and write down what they say. Isn't that good? I mean, that's just the hell with it. The plot takes care of itself, You got the characters.
So, given that you both have deep and long-standing connections to the state of Mississippi, and you're in Mississippi today and talking to Mississippi students, has that influenced your work, do you think?
Well, the same William Faulkner said that all Mississippians secretly aspired to be Virginians, and that's what John Grisham certainly has done that, and Robert Marsh too. The first thing he did when he got out of graduate school was get a job at Avery College in Danville, Virginia. Yeah, Jack Torkoff was an abstract expressionist, and I remember seeing paintings of his in the Whitney that had pink Mississippi, and I said, what the hell is it? There's a lot of I know about Mississippi, but the pink ain't one of them. No. Well, I don't know what, in Mississippi, I get credit for defending the place all the time, and you don't really, it's easy to do. I mean, because everybody's got an opinion about Mississippi, and most of the people who have the strongest opinions are the ones who haven't been here. And that's the first question I ask, well, when's the last time you were down there? I've never been. Then we ain't got no conversation. We don't make scientists in Mississippi. We make writers and artists and poets and musicians. That's what we do. There's the occasional Guyton that's a good doctor or something like that, and that's fine. But all you're going to do is train these people, and they're going to leave the state and not come back. At least I come back, In
the visual arts, when you and I were here at Ole Miss, there was only one person that had kind of a national reputation in the South. That's Lamar Dodge.
He was over at University of Georgia.
University of Georgia. But, he was the only one I think had the respect of. But
well, that's true. But there was the folk art thing was starting to happen because Betty Parsons came through here to see an artist's work, and she went right by his work and went to a bulletin board where he had a Theodore Hamlet. Miss Hamlet just lived down the street from me, and and we traded. And I've got a wonderful little Theodore Hamlet that I see every day of my life. Two children playing ball. She had these visions, and she'd pass out in the grocery store, paint Christian visions. But she was remarkable.
We now classify her as an outsider. In academia.
She was extraordinary though. She really and she was a good businesswoman too.
Oh really?
That's what you are as an artist, whether you teach or not. You're a small business person. And I told my accountant that. I said, she said, no, Bill, you're not a small business person. Small business has employees. You're a minute business person.
Can you take credit for your daughter becoming an artist, or is that
No, I encouraged her to do something else, but she just always drew. She went to art openings with us, and so she got it, and it was a world she was comfortable in, and so and she just turns out to be damn good at it. And
unbelievably good.
You didn't get in the introduction. Linda Burgess is my glorious wife, who may be the best artist in our family. Our daughter, Maggie Dunlap, has just got her master's degree from the Royal College of Art in London, so she's over there. I'm officially the third best artist in my own damn family. That's true. I'm allowed.
Thank you all so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for bringing it. You obviously have control of yourself.
Roundabout Oxford was developed and produced by Brian Corrigan, Taylor Fields, Sarah Catherine Glass, Brooke Gross, Alan Munschauer, Abigail Norris Davidson, Christina Streeter, and Alex Watson. Thank you for listening to Roundabout Oxford.